Hello, my friends. My name is Jen, and welcome to the Book Review. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another weekly wrap-up, and this one will be the last wrap-up of May. Look at us. I just put up my May favorites and stats the other day, so definitely check that out. I'm getting this filmed a little bit later in the day today. Don't mind me. I was at the marathon this morning. No, I did not run it. That is not me. But a bunch of my friends did the half marathon here in Fargo, which the Fargo Marathon is one of the Boston Marathon qualifiers. So we get people from all over the country in here. And they started their race at 7:30 this morning. And we were there and met them at a couple different mile markers, cheering them on. And then they finished. Here's a picture of them if I remember to insert it. They did so good. So that whole experience was fun, but then getting back home took a while. And yeah, so I'm just trying to stay cool and chill. It's pretty hot out there. But I still want to get this filmed today. So we're going to get this weekly wrap up done for you. But I don't have too many to talk about. Not because I didn't read a decent amount, but mostly because two of them are for book clubs, and you guys know I don't usually talk too much about the books for book clubs in here. And then I was also getting, it is a book box shipping month, which, by the way, let me just slide this over and show you. I have all of my shipping stuff right there, and that takes up a fair bit amount of time for me. So yeah, there won't be too much to get through today, but there was still some good ones to talk about. I'm excited. So before I start, I just want to say a welcome to Dominique, who joined my Patreon. Thank you so much, Dominique. That is amazing. I appreciate you here so much. It takes every person to keep me going around here. So I really appreciate you. But yeah, we will dive in with these. So to get back to where I was in my spot here, where are we? Okay, so the first book that I finished is a book club book, and it was Mr. Impossible by Loretta Chase. This is one of our Rake Appreciation Society reads for the spring session. The book club for this will be on June 4th on my channel at 8 p.m. Central. So if you've read this in the past or you read it for us with book club, make sure you join us. It'll be a fun time with me and Crystal. We'll be talking about this book and A Pirate of Her Own, which I'm in the middle of reading that one now. I'm about halfway done with it. Just kind of a little bit of the basics, just so that we say a little bit. This one is about Rupert Carsington, who is the fourth son of the Earl of Hargate. And he's from an aristocratic family, and he's totally a disaster. And he's actually currently in Egypt, and he is stranded in the depth of a prison, okay? And this book, maybe you've heard about it if you're a historical romance reader, or again, maybe you've read it yourself, really reminds me of The Mummy, okay? I should actually see when this one was written. I've never actually checked. Yeah, it was written in 2005, so definitely The Mummy was out already, for sure. But this really gives you The Mummy vibes, you know? So if you loved Brendan Fraser in that open throat white dusty shirt and the daring adventures, like, I think you will really like this, because I've heard that it feels like that book or that movie, and it really feels like it when you read it. I listened to this. It was narrated by Kate Redding, who's one of my favorite narrators, and this was just such a fun adventure story to listen to. But it is about Rupert, and then it is about scholar Daphne Pembroke, who is this beautiful widow, and she actually hires Rupert to help her rescue her brother, who's been kidnapped by a rival who's seeking a fabled treasure, because they want her brother to be able to basically like read the language that they need. Because her brother is actually listed as like the scholar who is able to do this stuff, but he actually has, like, Daphne's actually the one who has the skill, is kind of the point, because she's not allowed to be a scholar the way that she is, and so she's done it under her, like, brother's name, basically, and now he's the one who's been kidnapped for it. So her and Rupert end up, she kind of, like, gets him out of prison and hires him to help her rescue her brother. So, again, lots of similarities between this and The Mummy. It was very fun. They're very much, like, she maybe acts like she hates him, but this is definitely not an enemies to lovers. It's a like lovable scoundrel and a woman who's definitely had to really keep her cards close to the vest. She's a widow, as I said, so she does have a bit of power, but she's also been very much kept very small and very diminutive by her husband who died. So she doesn't have the best self-confidence in a lot of ways, but I truly just loved her so much. But anyway, like I said, I won't say any more about it. You can come to book club if you want to know the full feelings. But this was a great time. I enjoyed it. And I look forward to talking about it with Crystal and with all of our book club people. Okay, next up was actually a reread that I needed to read for Claire Kent. And this is actually her biggest book that she has, one of the longest ones, and also one of the oldest ones. Nameless is one of those books that it came out after Escorted did, but it didn't really fit in with her Noelle Adams titles, and so it was another one that got put under Claire Kent. And this book, in my opinion, and in Noelle's opinion as well, is one of the angstiest books that she's done, because it involves a lot of like these really like, just painful situations in a way where these two people just can't get on the same page. And it does push you to the edge quite a few times. But Nameless is actually about Aaron and Seth. And Aaron and Seth actually knew each other when they were younger. And Seth and her come back together to meet each other when a mutual friend who was actually like a father figure to Seth and who was a mentor to Aaron, he actually has died. And so they meet each other at the funeral again. Now, Seth is a lawyer and she is actually like a court clerk. So they do both work in law. But they meet up and they end up having a one-night stand. And she gets pregnant from this one-night stand. And she does let him know pretty much right away. So we do have that. But she is very firm with him that she doesn't want any undue help from him. She's like, I know you didn't choose this, but she's like, I really want a baby. She's actually also a divorcee, I should say. She is divorced and never had any children with that husband. And so I think she is maybe like 29 or so. So, I mean, it's not like she is old, but she's also not like 22 anymore. And she's like, I would like a baby. I want this. And I don't want to keep the child from you, but also I don't want you to just throw your money around and be able to like control our lives. Like, it's still very important to me that I be very independent. And he was like, okay, I'm not looking to step on your toes or anything, but I am interested in being involved. And so through this book though, it's kind of split right into two phases. There is the pregnancy part of it, which in some form, like they do actually have a couple situations of, you know, where they have sex when she's pregnant to almost like, you know, scratch an itch or whatever. But the biggest kind of angst involved in this story is that Seth actually falls for Aaron pretty quickly, but he is very reserved, very like, you know, hides away all of his feelings. He's never really had a family. And so it's very intoxicating to him in some ways to, you know, this woman who's carrying his baby and he's going to have a child and he could have a family. And so it equally thrills him and scares him at the same time. And when, you know, this book, Aaron often bugs readers quite a bit. And you'll maybe see that if you look up some reviews of this, because she doesn't make it like easy on him when he, you know, changes his mind about things. And she doesn't just fall head over heels for him. Like, it is a journey for Aaron, whereas Seth, like I said, does fall for her fairly quickly. So it's a very interesting dynamic between these two for sure. It really is. So yeah, this was really great to reread. Like I said, this was one of the first books that I read of hers. I've owned my own copy of this for a really long time. I'm trying to talk Noelle into doing special edition of Nameless, as well as the novellas that follow up with this couple. Hopefully that'll be one of the next special editions she does, because I really love these. But yeah, it was great to revisit this. And I think if you like the style of her books where they're a bit angstier, but they still feel so like raw and real, like this is a good one for you. And it is like a more novel length book of hers. Like usually her stories, she gets to the point pretty quick. So again, I don't rate books that I read from Claire Kent/Noelle Adams, so I won't tell you that. But I also didn't erase my review of this one before because I did read this one 3 years ago. So if you want to know what my thoughts were, then you can check that out. But I reread that one. Next up was Pray Tell by Amanda Richardson, and this was the Patreon book for May. So I will not be fully reviewing it, but I will give you a quick overview of it in just a second. But this was picked for May, which was Brother's Best Friend, was our trope for that. So I read this book, I annotated it. I did an exclusive review on my Patreon, which is available now at the Swooning for You level and above, as well as the previous, I believe we're at like, man, what are we at? Probably like 40 reviews or so, you know? So definitely check that out. And this is not a dark romance, though the cover may make you think so. And also the kink may make you think so in a minute, but this truly wasn't a dark romance between the characters. It just involved BDSM and primal play. But you'll see if you decide to read this, there's not a darkness in their relationship. It's not forbidden. So it really is a contemporary relationship that involved BDSM, right? Which I feel like that happens a lot in books these days anyway. I just think the cover also says, it has that same cover that a lot of, like for real, like think of some Mafia covers where they're the gray, the black and white photo, but they have the colored title. Like that's kind of the vibes you get. But anyway, Pray Tell actually starts out the Ravage Castle series. And this first book here, as I said, is Brother's Best Friend. It's a big age gap. And our heroine, when she was 18, her brother's best friend was 24. And she actually tried to get him to take her virginity. And he wouldn't do it, which then made her kind of embarrassed. And so she really has kind of like tried to stay away from him for the last many years. And now she's actually engaged. And he actually throws her an engagement party, like helps her brother do it. AKA he pays for it and does that because his family is billionaires or whatever. And it really kind of wakes her up to like, he knows so much about me and he's throwing this party for me and just, like what's going on? It's really kind of a shocking moment for her. And yeah, I thought it was, well, like I said, I don't want to talk about it, but this involved primal play was included with it. And when she discovers he might be into her, she maybe kind of sort of ditches her fiance, which I'll just tell you, it was kind of a mutual thing, actually. They're kind of just together just because it's easy. And so now she maybe wants to try something with Chase. So yeah, that's all I can really say. Again, I'm not going to do the full review of it for you guys because you could go check that out. But it was interesting. And Amanda Richardson, I'll just tell you, is going to show back up on this weekly wrap-up in just a little bit there. So don't you worry. Okay, next up, which was a reread. And I did gush about this quite profusely on the monthly wrap-up. But I reread The Duke's Perfect Wife and annotated it for one of my patrons. This is the 4th book in the Mackenzie series, and I actually had this, like I said, on my favorites list, even though I've read this a few times, because it just hit me in like a whole new way this time, Like there was just something about these two, Eleanor and Hart. And we have these two who were in love 12 years ago, and Hart made some bad decisions. I mean, he had a mistress at the time. He was treating Eleanor like she was some perfect sweet thing that he was keeping separate from some of his darker desires he had. And Hart's mistress actually like informed Eleanor of what he was into. Now, we can decide how we feel about that mistress. And if you've read The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, you'll know how a lot of people feel about that mistress. But Eleanor never quite saw it as the woman being completely jealous or trying to get rid of Eleanor. She truly saw Eleanor as maybe too innocent and sweet for Hart. And, again, I'm not saying she had perfect motives. I do not have perfect motive. I do not think that of this woman. Okay, I don't. But I also think that she maybe pitied her a little bit and was like, you're never going to fully like know him. There's things that he's into that he hasn't shared with you. And that's really what hurt Eleanor, is that he was hiding things from her, you know, and also like her father and mother, there was never any other woman, and like she wanted a true love, and she thought she had that with him, you know. She gave her virginity to Hart. She, you know, their families were both Scottish. They lived near one another, and she wanted to be with him, and he wanted to be with her. But again, he didn't handle things right when he was younger. And when they went their separate ways, he let a bit of his darker side come out, of like saying some hurtful things when she broke off the engagement. And then, you know, they never saw each other much for many years after. But they never forgot each other. And though Hart did end up marrying someone else who then ended up dying along with his child, he really was a broken man. And so, you know, he put his career and his family like in the, you know, as the most important thing. There were sacrifices he made not only for his country and for what his, you know, plans were, but also sacrifices he made for his brothers, particularly Ian. And that is, as well, as I said in my monthly wrap up, the choices and the things that Hart did to protect his younger brother from their father, to keep him from being mistreated. He wishes he'd been able to do even more for his brother, but while their father was alive, there was only so much that Hart could do. But he never forgot Eleanor, and in fact, there was a few times that he wrote letters to Eleanor that he never expected replies from. There were just certain things that he felt like he could only tell to her. So it was this very interesting thing where he kept certain things from her because he was afraid of her judging him and not wanting her to see his darker side, but yet she was the one that he shared some of his darkest thoughts with as well. So it was just very interesting choices that Hart made, you know? But these two getting their second chance, which doesn't happen completely on their own. You know, Hart does say in previous books that he wants Eleanor back, like that is who he wants. But he's like, no, I have to become prime minister and I have to do this and this, and then Eleanor, it'll be time to have her. And there is a few, particularly one meddler who thinks it's been long enough and goes about thrusting Eleanor and Hart together again. And it's a really beautiful thing, okay? It's a really beautiful thing to see because, like, Hart can say he wanted Eleanor back, but would he have found the right situation, or would he have said the right things and brought her back into his life again? And anyway, she ends up there, and now they're forced to see each other, and it doesn't take long before those feelings that never fully went away are fully back. And they're starting to really confront a few of the things that tore them apart and realize that, you know, they still see the person they genuinely love and they're willing to make it work. And as Eleanor peels back and sees even more of the things that he did, you know, she understands him more now. And her being older, she understands the situation he was in and the decisions that he was making. And should he have had a mistress or been doing the things he was doing? Maybe not. But he maybe didn't know better back then, you know? So I don't know. I'm talking in circles about this, but I love Hart and Eleanor. And if you've loved The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, but you've never kept reading this series, I always suggest it. Like, all of the first 4 books particularly are really good, but Ian's book and Hart's book are fantastic. And the moments in this book that involve like Ian and Hart having moments together and the different little things they do to care for each other in like a manly way just absolutely turn me into a puddle. Okay? They turn me into a puddle. All right? Okay, next up, I had a reread as well, but this one was for a patron as well, And this one was of Wild River by Laura Pavlov. So one of my patrons wants all of these books annotated, and I hadn't read Romeo, but I have read books 2 and 3. So I've read this one before. I had an audiobook of it back then. But this one is about Ruby and River, And River is a lawyer. And Ruby, I can't remember. I think she's going for psychology. I don't know. But she's back in town because her dad ends up in the hospital. And her dad is actually really close with River. Her dad is divorced from her mother. Her mother and I think it's at least one of her brothers, they're kind of a hot mess. And part of the reason her leaving town and, you know, finding something there is because her family is a bit toxic, okay? Like, she loves her dad, but anytime she's back home, like, her mom starts sucking her into problems. And she just, you know, doesn't need that in her life, you know? And again, River is close friends with her dad. And when she shows up, you know, to see her dad, who has basically taken too much, I think it was too much erectile dysfunction medicine. I think he took too big of a dose, and like it caused, like, I don't know, it caused heart problems. It did something. And so she ends up there and she's like very upset with him because she's like, seriously, you took too much of this thing trying to act like you're a 20-year-old and you could die, and then what would we do? So she's very upset with her dad. And her first like interactions there, like River, I believe, is at the hospital when Ruby like gets there, and River is like, just chill out. And she's like, meh, meh, meh. Like they just start bickering. And so these two are just going like back and forth. And so it's supposed to be kind of an enemies to lover situation, but she is just really kind of bitchy to him to start with. He doesn't help himself. It's not like she's completely unreasonable. Like, you know, she's worried about her dad and she's freaking out a little bit, and she doesn't quite know how to act about it. So I don't give her too hard of a time for it, truly. Like, I understand. But she ends up sticking around town for a little bit until her dad is getting better. And she also is trying to decide what she's going to be doing next. And so she's working part-time at the bar in town. And again, she starts getting sucked into her mom's drama right away. Like, her mom needs money from her. Like, that's always what it is. And she just feels very like, you know, that's why I escaped this town, right? Because it's easier to ignore her mother's drama when she's not there. But that has also kept her away from her dad then, you know? So it's this like double thing. And anyway, her and River just keep running into one another, and eventually they start fucking, and they're kind of like rivals to fuck buddies situation. I believe the very first time there's actually a bet that he can't make her come in 60 seconds, and then they swap and she makes him come in 60 seconds, and I'm like, why do we gotta rush? Like, why do we gotta rush through this, you know? So this was fun, and it was fun to revisit it. But sure enough, when we get to the third act, I remembered why this one annoyed me. Like, Loving Romeo, I liked the third act of that one, I did. But this one, it involves, you know, the hero making a gesture. I'm not calling it a grand gesture. He makes a gesture, but he does it in a hidden way that the heroine isn't able to see. And so when she doesn't comment on it or do anything about it, he thinks she's fucking him over and just saying, nope, I'm on my way out of town, when really he didn't make sure that she received said gesture, and then act like she was a heartless bitch for not acknowledging what he did. And I gotta say, bruh, seriously. And I immediately remembered this when I got to that part. I was like, oh no, that's right, this thing. So it does take away a little bit of the enjoyment for me, because this dude just, he annoyed me so much. Like, truly, it was annoying. So this one, I can finally tell you, like, I gave this one 4 stars, which was what I gave it last time. I didn't bump it down. And it was a 3 on the spice scale for me. I was just double checking. I was like, it's true. The first 3 of these, I couldn't give you the rating because one is for book club, one is for Patreon, and one is for Claire. So the one I didn't give you a rating for was The Duke's Perfect Wife, and that is 5 star. So sorry, I was just double checking. Okay, so the final one that I read this week, like I said, I didn't have a ton. I was in the middle of so many books at the end of the week that I only finished one of them. You know, that's how it goes. But like I said, Amanda Richardson shows back up on the list, because after I read Pray Tell, I ended up looking up this series because I wasn't sure how old this series was or if it was completed or not, because there was 5 brothers total in the Ravage family. And sure enough, I found that the whole series is out and there was 5 books. And so there are a few of them I wanted to read, but one of them that caught my attention was actually book 5. So I did skip to book 5 because it is called Holy Hearts, and it is a MMF, okay? And also it has an ex-priest. So actually in book 1, one of the characters becomes a partial owner in a academy, a private Catholic academy, by the way. And he makes his brother, who has been a priest or a pastor. Was he a pastor? I don't know what he was, but I think he's not really being a priest anymore, but he makes him the headmaster of this school. And there is reasons why Chase made his brother the headmaster of that school. I won't go into all of them for that, but it did have to do with the plot of that book. And in this one, we have Malachi is the brother who was the ex-priest, and he used to have a roommate when they were like 19 years old, and they were the best of friends. And the very last time that they saw each other, they actually kissed and kind of fooled around a little bit. And it was actually like the day before they like moved their separate ways, and they haven't spoken to each other since then, which I believe has been, man, what did they say it's been? Has it been 17 years, they say? Like, it's been a long time. And the reason that was able to happen is, like, Julian is actually, like, British, and so he, like, moved back home, and then, you know, it weirded both of them out to have done stuff together. Has it been 17 years? I should have checked. It's been a long time because they were 19, and, like, it's been a long time, I think. So they haven't seen each other since then, and Julian, the friend, he's actually married now to Sophie, and he's bisexual, and like he's out as bisexual. He actually had his like sexual bi awakening after that kiss, and he has actually dated some men since then, but he ended up married to a woman, and they've been married for a few years, and of like not a full-on swingers scenario. They are Sophie is what's called a hot wife, I guess. And what that means in this scenario of this book is that they are like an open relationship. And I don't know that like Julian sees anyone. It seems to be mostly just open for these specific scenarios they do. And like there are men that get invited to basically fuck Sophie in front of Julian. And they like this a lot. And they have done this for quite a while. It's something they both really enjoy. And they're totally committed to each other, but they're very open about those things. When they discover that they are in like the same town as Kai, you know, Julian actually has known that this is a possibility they'd run into each other. And I assume this was in a previous book. Like I said, I went from book 1 to 5 because I wanted to read this scenario. And I think that one of the other like brothers, one of their new wives is like friends with them. So they knew there was a chance they were going to run into Malachi is kind of the point. And sure enough, Julian runs into Kai at the gym, and they start like talking again and trying to be friendly. Then there ends up being a party that they all go to. I think it actually is at like at the sex club that one of the brothers owns. I think Orion owns a place, and they're having a party. And at this party, which they get invited to, Julian and Sophie are going to do one of their scenarios. So Sophie is out picking up a guy that she's going to start fucking, and then Julian is supposed to like come in on them and like, ooh, that's their scenario, is he caught them cheating, but it's all consensual and everything. The only problem is when Sophie has found her man for the night and is like, you know, making out on him, Malachi happens to walk by. And so he sees Sophie kissing another guy. And he, of course, immediately is like, are you serious? So he gets very offended by all of this. And he does jump to saying, like, how could you do this to my friend? Which, again, bro, you haven't been friends with him in how long? So just chill. You maybe should read the room that you are at a sexy situation. That was the other thing too, is I was like, you're at a sex club. Do you not know that people do? So he jumps right to the bad thing. And Sophie, feeling like she doesn't owe this guy shit, doesn't try to explain it either. She's just pissed about it. And then when they all like run into each other again, like Julian or Kai doesn't say anything, but he's like side-eyeing her the whole time. And eventually, I don't think it's right then, but eventually Sophie is like, he saw me kissing someone and he jumped to conclusions. And Julian's like, oh my God, that is so awkward. I'm so sorry. And he goes eventually and explains to Malachi what's going on. And he's like, no, I'm totally fine with it. We have an open relationship, particularly for this. And she can fuck who she wants. And like, we have our scenario, how we do this. And like, she wasn't in the wrong. And this is tough for like Malachi to process at first. But then also, he's really kind of turned on by it too. And of course, one thing's going to lead to another, and they actually both kind of want to like see him. So that is what ends up happening, is they're now slowly dating each other. But this is interesting because at first, Malachi, their first situation, which I won't go through the whole thing, but their first situation involves like Malachi being invited to fuck Sophie while Julian watches, which is what normally happens. But, you know, Julian is into Kai, and Kai has, you know, had secret feelings for Julian ever since he'd kissed him way back when. So, you know, their scenario where they are doing stuff together does kind of lead to, you know, Julian getting a bit more involved than he would normally get in one of their scenarios. You know, there's more going on. And so they have to discuss that and see where they're going to go. So this does have a like monogamous triad HEA by the end, because that is one of the things that I'll just say is one of the struggles for Kai, is that he is opening his sexuality. He is falling in love with the two of them, but he's worried, like, am I always going to be the outsider? Are you still going to want to fuck other people? Am I expected to also be in an open relationship because, like, you guys are? Like, those are kind of the scenarios in here that have the conflict to it, which I thought were very interesting, because it's true. It's like they, you know, Julian and Sophie enjoy the, like, random sex with another male partner. Like, how will it work out, basically, is what it is. So that's kind of the conflict for it. So there was a lot that I enjoyed about this, including, in my opinion, not having this chronic illness, but there was some really good endometriosis rep in here from an outsider's perspective, and from, maybe some hints I've gotten from my friends who have it. Sophie has that, and it has led to, like, we see her having flare-ups in this, and we see how the care of her is taken in this, and it was so sweet. And so that is some of the representation in here was good. But what I do want to say is where this book kind of fell short for me a little bit was something that also kind of happened in Pray Tell, but it wasn't as big of a deal in Pray Tell, honestly, but there was hints of it in that book. There is a certain, I don't know how to word that. It's always tough to word this, because I don't mean it to say that I don't support said cause that is being taken up in here, because I do. I just think it was shoehorned real hard, if that makes sense, right? And again, I'm not going to go full details into it, but it has to do with the school that Malachi is the headmaster of, and with some certain unsavory characters at this school. And so there'll be these scenes where we're having these great emotional scenes between Kai and Julian and Sophie. And then we'll have Kai at work, and he's dealing with a scenario that just feels so disconnected from everything happening with them that it makes that whole cause that we're dealing with seem very much like I am going to light my flame for this cause, and it's getting into this book, even if it doesn't fit it or not, right? And that is always something I have a problem with, no matter what said cause is, right? I talk about that, whether it's something I support or whether it's something I'm not sure about myself. I want it to smoothly work into the plot, because otherwise it feels showboaty. It feels performative when it doesn't have to do with the first plot, you know? Because it's dealing with characters that some we don't even see on the page. It's all a makeshift scenario involving people that don't affect us at all. And it brings the whole flow of the story to a dead stop multiple times. Now, this is just Jenn's point of view. Again, if it's a cause that you really, truly are like, yes, this needs to be in these more, you might not feel that way. But for me, again, it is a cause that I appreciate, that I want to support, but it didn't fit. Right? It didn't fit these characters, and it didn't fit where it happens. It just felt like a big sore thumb. And so I would skip all of those scenes. And this is a long book, so it's like we should have I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to go into the full thing, but we should have actually had said character that it was affecting on the page, because it's happening to a student is my point. There's something happening with a student and Kai is trying to help behind the scenes as the headmaster. And I'm like, why don't we have that kid on the page and have them interacting with Kai and show how much Kai cares about them, instead of he's only dealing with like the parent and he's dealing with like administrators and the board about it, but we never see that kid. And so it just all feels then performative because we're fighting this battle for someone we've never seen on the page, right? Okay. Maybe that doesn't make sense to you guys. If you read it, if you have read it, let me know if you agree. But I really enjoyed the relationship with Sophie and Julian and Kai. So I ended up at a 3.5 star, rounded up for this one, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. And yeah, I love reading MMFs like that one. So I had a really good time with it. So yeah, like I said, that was a bit of a quicker one. I just didn't make it through the volume of books I normally do. But I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts on them. I hope you'll come to book club this week. Again, check out my Patreon if you want my in-depth review of Pray Tell, or just check out my Patreon if you want to support me in any way. It helps so much. It means the world to me. And thank you so much for watching, friends. We'll see you next time. Bye.